let's talk about snacks. So quite often this comes up before long whenever I'm helping somebody change their diet. What can I have for a snack? And I think snacking is something that for many of us is just really deeply ingrained in our lives and in our habits. And you know, there's a number of reasons for that I think are useful for us to reflect on. And one is because we live in a culture where snacks have been really heavily marketed and promoted to us. I don't know what it was like when you were young, but we pretty much just had 3 meals a day, and there was nothing more exciting than a rich tea biscuit in the cupboard or a ginger nut, and they were my mum's. But as you know, the years have gone by, it's just become very normal and very socially acceptable for us to snack all day, every day. You know, we can eat constantly if we want to, everywhere we go. There's snacks at checkouts, on petrol stations, corner shops, you name it. Health food, everywhere, you know, there's just constant snacks. So it's around us all the time. So it's not surprising it's become something that's really important. And what I also want you to think about is the snacks that we've been sort of encouraged to eat over the years taste really nice, and they are designed to taste amazing and really light up the pleasure sensors in our brain, so we get a really big hit from that sugary, sweet, salty thing, you know, whatever your main, you know, thing is. We get a huge amount of pleasure because it's a very, very intense taste, very intense sensation, you know, mouthfeel, crunch, texture, you know, that's all deliberately created to make these snack foods highly, highly palatable and make us want to eat them and want to eat more and more of them. So that's what we're up against, okay? Now, one of the things that we also I just want to sort of touch on about why we might snack is we're just sometimes short on time. And maybe if we don't have time to make ourselves a proper breakfast or a decent breakfast, then we end up just sort of snacking and grazing as we go through the day because we've not fed ourselves properly and we need to keep topping up our energy. So that might be why we snack, okay? There's a third thing that I think is a change around perimenopause and menopause. And this is something that I sort of think about from an anecdotal perspective. It's certainly something I've experienced. And I don't think, as you go through the perimenopause, your sensation of happiness and pleasure can start to be dulled. Some of those endorphins change, and I hear a lot of people who feel like they're just, things just aren't quite as exciting. They don't get exciting or enjoy things as much as they used to. And you know, it's really important that we experience pleasure in our lives, especially when we're working hard. There's something called sort of the pleasure and the motivation balance. So we need to work really hard to keep our houses straight, to keep kids and teenagers in school and doing the homework, or partners contributing, or friends happy, partners, family happy, all the rest of it, work happy. We're constantly sort of working hard. We have to get some pleasure in our lives to offset that, otherwise our motivation will drop. And if you start to find that the sort of your enjoyment and your mood is draining from your life and your sort of mood's dropping, then those things that might have given us the pleasure before aren't quite there. But what we do have access to very easily is sweets, chocolates, crisps, cakes, coffees, you know, Prosecco, whatever your thing is. And they can be something that we start to turn towards more in perimenopause or menopause, because it gives us an instant shot of pleasure that just is almost like an injection of something that we need to help us get through what can feel like a very tough and draining day. Now, I've always been a bit of a snacker in my life, and you know, managed to sort of keep it under control and learn about diet and all the rest of it. But when I hit perimenopause, or when I sort of, you know, realised sometimes do you, but I just really went through a phase where I was craving stuff constantly, and it didn't matter that I knew I was stealing my daughter's chocolate, or I knew that it wasn't what I was should be eating. I didn't care. I just thought, well, fine, I know all these things, Gabrielle, I'm going to have it anyway. And there I did, and those cravings sort of really changed, and it became a lot harder for me to manage. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. So we live in a world where they're there everywhere we go. They're designed to be addictive, and I think they can be a really valuable or useful drug for us, or tool for us to use around perimenopause when we're struggling a bit, because we just get a hit of pleasure for a very short space of time. Okay, so that's sort of almost like a bit of context, I guess, for snacking. Now, what I want you to think about now, though, is two ways of thinking about snacks. You've got what I like to think about or call conscious snacking versus unconscious snacking. Now, conscious snacking might be where we meet up with a friend for coffee, we go out for the day, and we decide to have, a pot of tea and a scone and cream. That's a snack, isn't it? Because it's not a meal. And we might feel we've made a conscious decision that I'm out for the day, this is a special occasion, I want this. End of story. No guilt, no anything. Great, that's life. Pleasures of life, okay. Unconscious is slightly different, because either we're constantly doing it and grazing without really noticing, and I know a lot of people, and I've certainly been guilty of this in the past, so I'm eating something before I even realise I was doing it. I've gone to a cupboard and my hand's in something and it's in my mouth and I've not even really thought about it. It's just been an automatic habit of something that I've done. I think this is something, again, that women can suffer from a lot more, because we're in the kitchen all the time doing jobs, so the food's all around us, we're shopping, we're preparing, we're making the food, we're cleaning up after everyone, so we can just very easily be just sort of putting bits of food in our mouth all the time without really thinking about it. So without really thinking about it, or we might eat it really quickly because we feel bad about it, and we feel guilty about it, and we're not savouring it, we're not enjoying it, we're just doing it out of some habit or mysterious compulsion that we just don't feel like we're in control of. And I put that in the unconscious bracket, if you like. And so, and if we feel that snacking is an issue for us, and it's something that is out of control and causing us anxiety, because it can be, we can find that we know we're eating the wrong things, and we don't feel good about it. We don't feel like we've got it under control. We've got really strong cravings. We end up maybe feeling so cross that we eat more of it, and then go to bed feeling guilty, fat, bloated, useless, all the rest of it, and wake up the next day feeling guilty, full of remorse, and putting ourselves under ridiculous pressure to have a perfect day, whatever that is. That's not healthy. Whereas you meeting up with a friend or going for a walk in the countryside and sitting down in a cafe after to have a coffee and a cream scone, that's my cake of choice, by the way, if that's not obvious, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's something that you eat, make a conscious decision, eat it with pleasure, enjoy it, savour it, and have no guilty feelings or regret, remorse after it's just been really nice. That's fine, that's okay. And those types of things can actually be quite few and far between. That's a really healthy way for us to indulge in a way that works for us, that's not having us have behaviour that feels like it's spiralling out of control. So usually it's the unconscious or constant snacking that we just need to pay attention to, and try and get under the skin of why we're doing that. Okay, now I'm going to cover this off in other sessions, Q&As, or maybe lives through the programme, but because I think it's something that people really can relate to, and is a very common problem. So reasons why you might be doing it, let's talk about those for a minute. Quite often it means we're not eating the right things. So classic, women have spoke to it, it's on my podcast episodes if you listen to them. Start the day with a piece of toast and then eat bread all day till lunchtime, and when they sort of work out what's gone wrong, they're not eating anything else, so they're on this sort of sugar, this glucose roller coaster of a spike of cravings, because they're not feeding themselves properly. They're hungry and they're just eating little bits of food because they feel bad about it, so they never feel full, they never get nourished, and they're constantly eating, and you've got all these cravings because you're just getting the sugar, you're never satisfying your appetite. So we could be craving having constant snacks because we're not eating the right food, and maybe switching to that sort of 3 nutritious meals a day, or starting the day with a really good high quality breakfast might be all it takes for us to kick out of that cycle. Another thing that it can be is just straight off habit. When we have a coffee, we have a biscuit. When we fill up the car with petrol, we buy a pack of sweets. When we walk past a coffee shop, we get a coffee and a cake. You know, we can just do these things as an automatic habit. When we're conscious of that, we can do something to break that habit, go a different way. Keep your hands in your pockets when you pay for your petrol or something. It's quite easy to break a habit once you realise that's all it is. It sort of takes the power out of it. Or you might create a different habit. Instead of picking up a chocolate bar, you might pick up an apple, right? I mean, how many apples are there in petrol stations? Not many. Not a great example, but you know what I mean. Or you take an apple with you, so that when you're having your coffee, you've got an apple instead of a pastry, something like that. But we can do proactive things to actually break those habits and change them. Now, it might be that you've broken your habits. Good. You're eating your 3 nutritious meals. Great. You're not hungry. You're not hungry, I should say. You're not feeling those pangs or those cravings because your appetite's stabilised, but you still miss the food that you used to eat. Because remember, someone's spent years fine-tuning those recipes to make them super addictive, super palatable, really tasty, and you just might really miss that and really want to eat it. So that's something that you then have to look at. What tactics are you going to employ to break that cycle, okay? If that's something that you want to do. Because remember here, I want you to think about the fact that you are a grown-up. You get to design your life and the way you eat and your relationship with food. A healthy way to do it, though, is to make conscious decisions about what you do and don't allow in your diet, versus be driven by uncontrollable forces that make you eat compulsively, okay? Because at the end of the day, there's no reason any food is off limit. And it's absolutely fine for you to make decisions or choose foods that you want to have in your life on a regular basis. And you make a conscious decision to have it, savour it and enjoy it, eat it slowly when you have it, and be completely at peace with that, okay? If you're eating foods in your diet that you know aren't doing you any good, and you really wish you weren't eating them, and you want to try and break that pattern, then you have to employ a few strategies to deal with that, okay? So I'm just going to talk through some of those things that you might consider. One is to start to recognise your triggers, all right? So when you notice that you're craving something, you want to sort of roll back and think, well, what's behind that? Now, when I first did this, I've worked for myself and worked from home for a long time, way before COVID. And there was a day when I was just realised I was stood in front of an open fridge looking for something, who knows what. And I would have done that hundreds of times. But for some reason, this day I thought, why am I here? What am I doing? And instead of just reaching in for the fridge for whatever I was looking for, and I went and sat down and did a little bit of journaling to think, what was I doing beforehand? What was it that happened? And that's when I started to recognise that my trigger for eating in the day, or this unconscious snacking, was every time I had some work to do that made me feel uncomfortable. You know, that I maybe could have been something that was really boring, like do my accounts, or that I felt a bit worried about, like my accounts. Or something that I was struggling with a little bit and wasn't quite sure how to do it, because I was working on my own. I didn't have a colleague to say, ask for help. I'm just suddenly left there trying to think, how do I do this? And when I experienced these feelings or these sensations, it felt like a sort of a funny feeling in my stomach, like a gnawing, uncomfortable, unpleasant sensation that I didn't like. And my reaction to either get rid of it or distract myself from it was to get up and eat something. And that was almost like my little excuse to walk away from my work and go in the kitchen and eat something. And you know, that could be something that I would do constantly throughout the day, you know, because you could be, you know, your work can be challenging or boring or dull or anxiety inducing all day long, can't it? You know, and literally I would be snacking all the way through the day. That's not great. That's not healthy. Okay, so recognizing that trigger and then shining a light onto that habit is really important, because suddenly you start to get back some control, and it helped me understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. Okay, so once you sort of got to a point where you understand that trigger and you recognize it, you've still got that craving there. You still don't want to be doing that work. You still want to sort of get up and escape from your desk or whatever your situation is. What can you do then? Well, can you sit with that craving and let it pass? Because that's really where you want to try and get to a point where you don't feel that you have to compulsively act on it, but you sit there and you try and either let it go and wait for it to go, because it will, or if you find that that doesn't work, distract yourself with something else. And you might do something, you know, if you recognize that that trigger might be loneliness or feeling like difficult for your work, with your work, or the fact that you maybe just feeling a bit overwhelmed by stuff, maybe you do need a break. So maybe instead of reaching for, you know, a slice of cheese or a block of chocolate, you go and sit in the garden with a cup of tea and just take 5 and have a breather. Or you take a little notebook and try and journal out what your action plan might be for the problem that you're dealing with, or you ring someone up for a chat, or you go for a walk around the block. You know, what things can you do that help to break that pattern? And rather than having a need, because quite often that craving is linked to you having a need for something. You know, I needed support, or I might have needed calming down. What other things can you do that give you those things that you need, without resorting to just stuffing something in your mouth to either distract you from that feeling or push it back down? Okay, there can be other things that you can do as well as sort of the distraction technique. I find, because I still have this is something you live with. You know, I haven't just suddenly banished cravings from my life. It's a very real, constant part of my life that's always there, that some days I'm better at others with. But things that I notice that work for me are going and cleaning my teeth. So if I literally just think I've got a nice fresh minty toothpastey tasting mouth, that helps me think that I don't want to eat something. Okay, another thing that I find that can work is if you, and this sits, you know, again, I tend to do eat the sort of 3 nutritious meals a day, but I still have the cravings in between meals for those same reasons. But I might have a plan that I'll have my breakfast at 8, say, and I'm going to eat my lunch at 12:30. And knowing that I've given myself the time to eat my lunch or eat my next meal means that I've got a goal and I've got a target to aim for. And that can help me think, well, I've had my breakfast, I'm going to eat my dinner's only an hour away or half an hour away. Usually those cravings have got nothing to do with real hunger. And that can be enough to help me just sort of stretch it out a little bit, not eat the thing and wait until my next meal. Okay, that can be helpful. If you've other things that can help, so there might be days where recognize as well what, you know, you'll have good days and bad days, we all will. So let's say you have a run of good days and you have your 3 nutritious meals and you do fine, and then something happens and you don't get time to make a proper breakfast, or you don't get time to stop for a proper lunch. This happens to me quite a lot. And what will happen then is I might just end up having a few slices of cheese and nuts because I've not got time to make my lunch, or I can't think what I want for my lunch because I'm too overwhelmed and stressed. Then I'll end up feeling like I've not eaten properly, and then I'll just eat rubbish all afternoon. And how do you stop that when that's happening? Okay, the thing that I notice that works for me is if I then almost eat something proper, because usually this pattern's true for most people. When you're eating around cravings like that, you're not eating proper food. You're eating a few crackers, a few crisps, a bit of chocolate, you know, maybe a bit of cheese or nuts, but quite often it's like more the carby type food that sort of almost exacerbates that constant spiking and sort of cravings roller coaster. So if you suspect that that's happening, which is likely it will be, a really good thing to have is some proper food. So for me, what works is having some scrambled eggs with butter, which might sound grim, but it really works, because suddenly I'm giving myself a combination of protein and fat, which neutralizes that glucose spike and that roller coaster and fills me up. And then I find from that, I feel like I've had something filling and proper. It's quick, so if I haven't got time, it works really well, and I like them, so that makes it easier. If it's not something that you like, you'd have to find something else that works for it, but for you, I should say. But that can be something that puts the brakes on that cycle when you feel like you're stuck in it and you don't know how to get out of it. Okay, so that's a strategy that you can try. And let's say then, tactic 3, you just have a shit day and you just can't get your act together and you eat terribly and you feel furious with yourself and go to bed feeling dreadful. Okay, so how do you snap out of that? Because quite often you can have those days and then they start to run back to back. Now, the thing that works for me, so again, I've sort of I've been through all of this myself, and I've done a lot of the research and work that I wrote for my book, and done the work on myself. And what is really helpful strategy for me then to get the next day back on track is to plan my meals, what I'm having the next day. So I literally know my breakfast, my lunch and my dinner. They all sit under the 3 nutritious meals. I don't plan them the day because I want to get away from the emotional roller coaster. I want to make a rational decision and make good quality choices in advance. Because if I'm waiting until I do it in the moment when I'm feeling bad or I'm coming down off that sort of sugar high, I'm not going to make the right choices. So I'll make those decisions before, and I'll plan out my breakfast, lunch, dinner. I'll put a time when I'm going to eat them, so that can help me manage sort of resist having the snacks again between the meals. And then another thing that I'll do maybe first thing is go for a walk. Because sometimes, and a lot of people find this, if you just do a little bit of exercise or just a bit of time for yourself, it can really lift your mood. It can really be something really positive that you do for yourself that gets you off on the right footing, gives you a boost motivation wise, mood wise, makes you feel good about things, makes you feel confident that you can just get back on the right path that day. And 9 times out of 10 that works. And don't give yourself a hard time about having cravings and succumbing to them. I hope you realise from listening to this that there's lots of reasons we have them, and it's not as simple as you being lazy, greedy, having no willpower. It's to do with lots of very different things, how we're marketed to, the environment we live in, how much time we have, the way that food affects our blood sugar, our menopausal hormones, a whole raft of things. So if you have a tough day, be kind to yourself, have a little plan for the next day, and just do your best to get back on with it. And over time, you'll find it easier. But it's take it slowly, play the long game, and know that there'll be setbacks, because there always are. Don't give yourself a hard time about them. And again, that can take the power away from them and make it easier for you to get back to eating sort of a healthier way, and a way that you feel better about. Okay, so that's a big topic, big section. What I just want to finish on is to say that sometimes snacks are handy if you are hungry, because sometimes we are, different day, your appetite can change day to day. So if you're feeling hungry between meals and genuinely know that you're hungry because you just keep getting a rumbly tummy and that doesn't go away, then eat. that's fine. The rules though, I hate to say the word rules, but it's better if you can eat something, a combination of a balanced snack that would be protein, fat, and a little bit of carbohydrate if you wanted it, so that you don't get yourself into this sort of sugar cravings roller coaster that can happen if you grab a chocolate bar. Okay, and I'm not going to give you a big long list of snacks here. I am going to put our recipes I should say, for snack ideas, and I'll put a couple in the section below. But that's what, you know, there are maybe times when you are genuinely hungry, or it's before a workout, for example, that's you know, an important tactical time to have a snack, and there are great choices that you can have when you need it. Okay, so always ask me questions about that. It's a really emotive topic for many people, and I think sometimes, you know, if we have struggles with diet and weight, the root of that can be the issues with snacking and craving that can be so destructive, you know, and so difficult for us to cope with and live with, and cause a lot of stress and anxiety. So if that's something that you feel you need help with on this program, really just make sure that you put something in the Q&As, and let's have a conversation about it, because believe you me, I think most of us suffer with that as well. All right then, hope you found that helpful. I'll see you in the next video.